Coco Gauff's anger boils over after being stunned at the Australian Open. Cameras are everywhere. Athletes and celebrities know this, but sometimes even knowing they are constantly being watched doesn't matter. When someone is mad, they are going to show their anger, and Coco Gauff needed to show her anger at the Australian Open. The issue stemmed from her quarterfinal match against Alina Svitolina, having her best run in Melbourne, when little appeared to go right for the American. She landed 74% of her first serves, but Svitolina kept punishing what made it over the net. The Ukrainian won 59% of her returns on Gauff's first serve. The American was also troubled once again by far too many double faults. As great a player as she has one Achilles heel. She will often keep her opponents in matches they have no business being in simply by giving them free points. Coco Gauff gets shocked by Alina Svitolina at the 2026 Australian Open. In the first set against Svitolina, Gauff had 5 double faults. She fixed the problem in the second set, but the damage was done. Gauff dropped the first set 1-6, and that was coupled with the American struggling to do anything else. In the first set, she had 2 winners and 14 unforced errors. The second set was no better, except Gauff stopped committing double faults. She had just 1 winner and 12 more unforced errors. Svitolina was playing efficiently throughout, with just a few more unforced errors than winners. She wasn't beating herself the way Coco Gauff was taking herself out of the match. After the match, Gauff stayed classy, as she normally does. She shook hands with her opponent and walked off the court. It was then that she chose to have the meltdown she needed. Before getting to the locker room, she stopped on a ramp and slammed her racket down 6 times, 1 for each time she dropped serve during the match, breaking it. She played poorly, while Alina Svitolina played well. It was a perfect storm for Coco Gauff. She didn't deserve to win, and she knew it. She told the media as much after her match. Satan moments. The same thing happened to Aryna Sabalenka. After I played her in the final of the US Open, I feel like they don't need to broadcast, Gauff said. I tried to go somewhere where I thought there wasn't a camera because I don't necessarily like breaking rackets. I know I'm emotional. So, yeah, I just took the minute to go and do that. I don't think it's a bad thing. Like I said, I don't try to do it on court in front of kids and things like that, but I do know I need to let out that emotion. Coco Gauff will now move on to her next opponent. Alina Svitolina will next face Aryna Sabalenka in the Australian Open semifinals. Her previous best in Melbourne had been reaching the quarterfinals. She hasn't yet won a major in her career, but she can't be ruled out at the Aussie Open in 2026. The Melbourne air had that particular sharpness to it, the kind that carries both promise and pressure. Under the blazing lights of the Australian Open, Coco Gauff walked onto the court carrying more than a racket. She carried belief. She carried the expectations of a sport hungry for its next era. She carried the quiet burden of being young, brilliant, and endlessly watched. By the time the match ended, the air felt heavier. The final point didn't arrive with fireworks. It arrived like a sudden silence, a break in rhythm so abrupt it felt unreal. The ball sailed long. The umpire's call echoed. And just like that, Coco Gauff, champion, contender, symbol, was stunned into stillness. For a heartbeat, she didn't move. Anger is often misunderstood in sports, especially when it belongs to someone young and celebrated. It's labeled immaturity, petulance, a lack of composure. But anger, in its rawest form, is simply emotion stripped of its armor. And in that moment, Coco's anger was not ugly, it was honest. Her shoulders tensed. Her jaw tightened. The fire that usually fueled her footwork and fearless ground strokes had nowhere to go. The Australian Open crowd watched as the mask slipped. Coco had learned early how to smile through pressure. At 15, she was already the future. At 18, she was the present. By 20, she was expected to be inevitable. Every tournament became less about growth and more about fulfillment, of predictions, of headlines, of narratives written long before she stepped onto the court that night. But tennis doesn't care about destiny. The opponent across the net played freely, bravely, with nothing to lose. Each shot landed like a question Coco couldn't quite answer in time. The margins grew thinner. The court seemed to shrink. And slowly, unmistakably, control slipped away. When the loss became unavoidable, anger rose. Not at the opponent, not at the crowd, but inward. Anger at missed chances, at rushed decisions, at knowing she could play better, had played better, and hadn't found it when it mattered most. She slammed her racket, not in defiance, but in grief. Because for athletes like Coco Gauff, losing isn't just losing a match. It's failing to meet the version of yourself the world expects you to be that day. It's watching the storyline collapse mid-chapter. It's realizing that talent, no matter how immense, is never a guarantee. The cameras caught it all. The clenched fists, the frustrated exhale, the eyes that blink back tears not of weakness, but of fury. Social media would dissect it within minutes, some praising her passion, others condemning her lack of composure. But composure is a luxury when the dream slips through your fingers. What many failed to see was how deeply she cared. Coco's anger wasn't reckless. It was rooted in love for the game. The kind of love that demands excellence. The kind that hurts when it's not returned. She has spent years refining her serve, sharpening her movement, quieting her doubts. She knows what she is capable of, and that knowledge can be both a weapon and a wound. In the locker room, away from the lights, the anger softened. That's what anger does when it's real. It burns hot, then leaves clarity behind. Loss strips athletes down to their essentials. No slogans, no endorsements, just truth. And the truth was simple. She was beaten, not broken. The Australian Open has a way of humbling even the brightest stars. Its history is filled with champions who learned their most important lessons in defeat. Coco's chapter was never meant to be flawless. Fire doesn't disappear when it flares out of control. It learns how to be contained. What followed mattered more than what happened on the court. In her words afterward, there was accountability. No excuses. No bitterness toward her opponent. Just a recognition of the work still ahead. Anger, transformed into resolve. Frustration, redirected into purpose. That is the difference between a moment and a legacy. Coco Gauff will be back. Not because she's marketed as the future, or because fans demand it, but because her anger proves she hasn't grown numb. She hasn't learned to accept loss as routine. She still burns for more. And in a sport that can be lonely, unforgiving, and relentlessly exposed, that fire, when harnessed, is everything. The Australian Open stunned her. The anger boiled over. But beneath it all was something stronger than disappointment. A reminder that greatness is not defined by how you win, but by how fiercely you refuse to let a loss define you. Sometimes, the fire has to spill before it learns how to roar.